Being productive. Hi, I'm Ayodele, and I'm here with my sister Moremi.
Hello, Moremi here.
And welcome back to the relaunch of MILF Ministry podcast. Today, I figured since my sister is a psychiatrist, it would be great to have like a intro conversation about mental health, what it is to be a Black woman and a Black mother, and just navigating the challenges that we navigate. The conversation will be unstructured because we literally just sat down and was like, let's get back to work. The same thing that happened when my parents were here. So this is about getting back to work. Let's dive into the discussion. So I guess we can talk about ourselves briefly and then your background just to frame the conversation. So I'm Ayodele. I'm an attorney by trade, but I'm also a very creative person and a self-proclaimed MILF. Most days I spend my time now more as a talent manager, working with musicians and filmmakers, writers, content creators. That's what I spend the bulk of my day doing now. And the change of the podcast landscape has gone from straight audio to video. So now the creative side of me is more out. And my sister will introduce herself.
I'm Moremi. I work in the field of psychiatry. I've been working for about like a year and a half now at one of the hospitals up in Northern California. So that's what I spend most of my days doing. And then in my free time, I'm more either socializing with friends or doing some cosplay related content where I dress up and go to conventions and stuff like that. So that's most of my day to day, I guess.
Right. So I'm in my 40s. My sister is in her 30s. We're 10 years apart. I am a mom. She is an auntie.
It's a cat mom as well.
Right. Right. Animals,
don't
teenagers. Right.
Very different.
But yeah, like sometimes we have conversations because I think I'll just start with my personal mind. So there are times when I talk to my sister about holding on to stuff or feeling responsible for things that I'm not responsible for. Mm-hmm. So two of the biggest things that plague me are like, as a Black mother, dealing with my child's father has been extremely challenging because of the family that I come from. You know, mothers and fathers are actively in the child's life, whether you're just there physically and you're just there at the games or there for dinner, there for holidays, and or active in terms of having conversations. So I can talk to my father about things. And when both of my grandfathers were alive, I could talk to them about things. And when I say things, I mean like business decisions with my relationship, just emotional decisions. Like I remember talking to my grandfather and talking to him about wanting to get divorced and feeling like he was the only person that, even though he was an elder, out of all of my grandparents, I felt like he would understand. And he was like, I do. I understand why you're saying you want to get divorced. And that meant a lot to me, because typically when you're talking to someone 70, 80 years old and up, it's just like,
sometimes they'll be like, you should keep the relationship together and alive.
For the kids. It's like if you're not being financially abused or physically abused, and even financial abuse is sketchy because a lot of people would, as long as he's not beating you like damn near about to kill you, or just out here doing certain things, most people would not break up because you weren't getting along or you didn't feel happy, right? So that's something that I carried a lot of burden for because I felt like I was quitting early. And the second thing is like when you have a partner and your partner is struggling with something like, let's say, depression or struggling to get their life organized, feeling responsible for that as well. Because like, long story short, like I feel responsible for choosing this person to be my child's father. And I feel like I should have just magically known.
Right.
That right how he would have been so that I could protect my daughter and myself from this energy. So I kind of want to talk to you about like how that can destroy your mental health, because obviously taking responsibility for other people's behavior, whether you think you should know better or not, like what that can do to you, and how I think mothers do that to ourselves.
I mean, I feel like it's a very layered conversation because,
yeah,
especially now, a lot of women are realizing that we don't have to bring all the responsibility on ourselves. I feel like before it would be like, you know, you're supposed to take care of the household, you're supposed to take care of your bills and your job at work, and then still come home and take care of the kids. But now a lot of women are realizing like you don't have to take the responsibility of like being your partner's therapist, being your kid's like caregiver, the sole caregiver at home. Like we can kind of disperse or tell our partners that we don't have to take on that responsibility. That's a more common thing recently. And also just like the language that we have around, like you said, the different forms of control or expectations that you have in a relationship. Nowadays, where you're having words to describe what is happening to us, like words like gaslighting behavior, or just like you said, like financial control in a relationship.
Right.
Usually when people would think about domestic violence and stuff like that, it's always, like you said, the physical abuse. But now we have ways to describe, you know, a partner just being controlling of the, like, why were you out late? And that's like a form of control to some people, instead of just being like, you know, like just coming from a place of like concern and caring, instead of like trying to control where your partner is at all times. So I don't know. I feel like just having these conversations makes it easier to know like what is kind of a healthier relationship to be in, and not to be all up in your head. Because that can happen sometimes. Some people feel like they don't want to share when they're having struggles in their relationships, whether it's just feeling like things should be together, or just, you know, like social media is like you only want to post the happy things that are going on. So people don't necessarily know the inner workings of, you know, a relationship with a partner.
And I myself, even though I'm in my 40s, I'm very guilty of that. I remember almost kind of being obsessed, like looking at other people's relationships and being like, man, if they could pick a good partner, like why couldn't I pick a good partner? But some of that is me taking responsibility for how my partner acted in the relationship. And it's like, you're only responsible for the version of your partner that you chose to marry at that time. You are not responsible for being psychic. So it's like when you met your partner, like for example, in my case, the person was working consistently for 5 years. The person was responsible financially. And I put that in quotation marks because I think you can think someone is financially responsible when there's a plethora of money. Sometimes you don't really understand someone's responsible or not until money is tight. And you have to make really hard decisions, or you have to make sacrifices. And that's when you start to realize, like, were you financially responsible, or do we just have enough to cover everything and you can still do what you want on the side? And then when you realize, like, oh, you have to make a cut, like you can't buy certain things. And then you realize, oh, that person's not willing to cut certain behavior. Then you say, oh, well, were you financially responsible this whole time? But anyway, going back, you can't take responsibility for what you don't know. And I feel like I personally, once again, I will make the episode personal. I feel like I really plagued myself with, why couldn't I see this? Why couldn't I understand this? Why didn't I know this? And different people, family members were like, Ayo, you're not responsible for that. But what do you do in terms of like, how would you advise someone that's stuck in that thought pattern? I think is what I'm asking for, because I know what I do, but let's speak to people that are stuck in thought patterns of trying to be responsible for things that they're not. I view it as me struggling with controlling behavior. That's what I view that in me as. So how do you help people get out of that thought pattern?
So I think it comes from the aspect of you kind of like when you are thinking about a situation or something that you're upset about, you have to go with the mindset of, is this something that I was responsible for, or is this something my partner is responsible for?
Right.
And if it's something that your partner is responsible for or they're supposed to take care of, then one thing you could try to do is like have a conversation with them.
Mm-hmm.
That would be kind of like the first step. Like, hey, I guess just a brief example is like, we're trying to divide chores or something around the house.
Mm-hmm.
That's like a pretty common thing that I feel like people don't feel like it's balanced in relationships. Like,
it's still standard that it's not.
Women feel like they're doing more of the chores,
right.
like in terms of laundry, cleaning, cooking. So it could be just a simple conversation like, hey, you said that you were going to do the cooking and the laundry for this week, but that didn't end up happening. I feel like I was doing more of the cooking. Can you tell me what was going on?
Right.
And then if they're being receptive and being, a better partner or try to better themselves, then they would be able to at least explain what was going on in their mindset about why they weren't able to do something.
Right.
And then you can try to come up with solutions together. But if they're just of like, well, you usually do this, I don't feel like doing it, then that's kind of more of, it just seems more like they're not willing to be working together because this is obviously something that is upsetting and bothering you, which is why you're bringing it up. So it kind of has to come from a place of like both of you being understanding, and you can't always control someone when they're in the mindset that like, I don't feel responsible for this behavior, I don't feel responsible for this chore, I don't feel responsible for this financial thing. And if a conversation is happening over and over, then there's kind of going to come to a mindset or a point where you're just going to feel very, I don't want to say like not liking your partner, but you're just going to start to resent certain things.
Correct. Yeah.
Because you feel like you're not being heard, basically.
And I feel like everybody struggles with that. And I feel like it becomes a trigger because the flip side of that is usually when you choose your partner, it's because there's something that draws you to that person. It's something that makes you feel safe, comfortable, vulnerable, unless you're just there for financial reasons, which the comfortability could be, I'm financially secure, and that's where my security lies. But that, I think, is like the number one issue in relationships is like, I don't feel heard. And then when you don't feel heard, or when I don't feel heard, my friend Chanel, she's labeled this thing inside of me called the little fire monster. I labeled her as the dark passenger from Dexter, the serial killer show. But I think like there's something within me that, well, now I gotta fight. And not necessarily physical fighting, but I know that I'm in trouble if I want to pettily exhibit the same behaviors that are coming back to me. So it's like, we can use texting as an example because it's not connected to house chores, but a house chore would be a better example. But like, let's say you and your partner have communication issues and you're just like, I'm not going to tell you that you have 1 hour to text me back, but if you took 13 hours to text me back, I feel like that's unreasonable. Especially because if I'm asking you a specific question or trying to connect or whatever, like I feel like that's a long time. And so if you have a conversation and you're like, hey, this bothers me, right? In a relationship, because we talk about this all the time, in a relationship, I don't care what it is. If there's something about your partner that bothers you, you can have a conversation and learning to be happy with the reduced behavior versus do they do it at all? I think it's what will save many relationships, because I would like to say something one time to everyone in my life and that's it.
That would be nice if it only took one time and everyone magically changed their behavior.
Right. That's what I would, in my world, that's what would happen. I'd say, hey, I don't like this. Hey, to my child, do this, whatever. And at work, hey, whatever. And like, that's it. But that's not reality. Just watch Beyonce's documentary or a snippet of it. And she was repeating herself. And she was asking, I said, Lord, they got Beyonce repeating herself. What hope do I have at this point? I guess I have to find some more patience. But long story short, going back to the thought patterns, which is what I think is an important part of the conversation, which is, yes, you can ask yourself what you're responsible for and what you're not, what was your partner's responsibility, but what happens when you get stuck in that thought pattern? Because that's happened to me before, where it's like, man, I didn't choose the best partner. Then this happened, and now it's affecting my child emotionally. It's affecting me emotionally. It's affecting my child financially. It's affecting me financially. And you just get kind of stuck in this thought pattern where it's not going to take me anywhere to stay stuck. It's not going to take me anywhere to be upset. So what do you do with people that are, because once again, I said, I feel like it's a form of control, which is like, if I could have gone back and made different decisions, and now I'm mad at myself for not being psychic, which is unrealistic, unreasonable, because I'm upset with myself for things that were really outside of my control. What do you do to people with those, I guess you could call it like rumination. Yeah.
Ruminating thoughts.
How are you stepping out of that so that you can move forward?
I mean, ruminating is really, it kind of builds up into anxiety. So it's like, how do we decrease our anxiety when you're focusing on a thought over and over? And so I feel like there's kind of like two ways you can approach it. It's could be like, why are you ruminating on this one thing in the first place?
Good point.
Because it could be the expectation of just talking about relationships. If you were with a different partner before, for example, and your previous partner would always do this one thing for you over and over, and that was the expectation for you moving forward. Like, oh, my partner always bought me flowers.
Right.
So this is what I always expect moving forward for every person. And then you get like ruminating and like upset with your new partner because that's not their expectation for a relationship.
Or how they show love.
Yeah, that's not the way that they show that they care about you, is by bringing you flowers every day.
Right.
So that could be one way of managing it, is like, okay, within myself, this is the way I was shown of how to love a partner or respect a partner, was with this. Or the other way you could manage it is just like within yourself, doing things that make yourself feel calm or better when you're ruminating on certain things that you can't control. So another thing that you were talking about would be like financial insecurity. Like if your partner is looking for a job, obviously a job is not necessarily going to fall into their lap immediately. So there may be stress or anxiety about like, they said they were going to find a job. They haven't found anything yet. We're strapped with bills, and you're like, focus on it, very stressed and anxious. Obviously, you can't. I mean, some people would do this, but you can't go out and find a job for them and make them financially more secure.
Right.
Because that's something they have to do on their own.
Right.
So then you have to go within yourself and find things that are just going to make you feel calmer. So finding things that you enjoy in yourself to make yourself less stressed, because that is something that you and yourself cannot change.
That's true, right? Like, I think that's the hardest part. You cannot change your partner in the present. You cannot change if it's the same partner, you cannot change the past behavior. Right. If it's your previous partner, you can't change the past behavior. So I'm asking you this question because, like you said, yes, your partner should be working, whatever, but what can you do within yourself to calm yourself down? Because it can't just be, my partner's looking for work. What if it takes them a year to find a job?
Right. I mean, I feel like everything is based off of your own personal experience. Like, you have to go with what you know will help yourself to be calmer and to feel less stress.
Right.
So things you enjoy, like maybe listening to music, watching a show, talking with your friends, going on a walk. You kind of have to do those things and find those things that'll make you feel less stressed. But it has to be coming from, like even identifying that this is something that you can't change sometimes.
Right. I think that's helpful because for me personally, I've never connected rumination with anxiety, even though that makes perfect sense. So would you connect being controlling with anxiety? Because I connect that with trust. Like So
I mean, it's connected with both of them.
Okay. Okay.
Usually, if you feel like you're wanting to control a certain situation, it's because of previous experiences when you weren't in control.
Right.
Some bad outcome happened. So you're like, oh, well, I want everything to be the way I want it, because then if something bad happens, I know it's my fault.
Right.
It's not anyone else's fault.
Right.
The same with anxiety. It can be from a place of like, I'm worried about this thing. I'm worried about, my car not working or something like that. And that's because of something that you may be able to control. You're like, oh, I should have changed my tire like 2 weeks ago and I just didn't. So it would be like just you trying to calm yourself down to, work on something within yourself to help feel calm if you're trying to control something or feeling anxious about something. I feel like with relationships it's harder just because there's also the anxieties and worries of your partner that you have to deal with and worry about too.
What do you mean by that? Like you're trying to walk on eggshells because of their life circumstances? What do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like that. Like everyone, your partner is also coming from a different experience as well. So there may be certain things or things that you're doing or saying that may be triggering for them.
Yes.
Because even like coming from a form of control, like just combining households, like if you used to keep your household a certain kind of tidy, a certain kind of clean.
Yes.
Your partner moves in, they keep leaving their socks on the floor or something like that. You don't ever do that. And you're like telling them, hey, you got to pick this up. Some people may seem like, oh, you're controlling, you're being like, you're trying to do my mom or like tell me to tidy up. And that's why I'm like, you have to also consider your partner's interpretation of that. But they have to also come from a mindset of not like basically being rude when you're approaching them as well.
Or from the mindset of, we're both going to have to make compromises.
Yeah.
So everyone in my family knows I'm like literally the most anal person in the family. I track germs like someone that has OCD. So like if you touch the trash chute, I'm monitoring that hand all the way until I see it get some Purell.
Yeah.
I don't want you to touch anything anywhere
in between.
You put it in the trash. I'm looking at your hands until you get the Purell. And if you try to come to me, I'm just like, trying to touch this because I'm just like Purell contamination. Everyone is not like that. Will you survive if someone touches the trash and touches you? You will, but I'd rather not. But yes, so a lot of times I'm like, I'll make the excuse like, I'm not really trying to be controlling of what you do. I'm just saying if it's going to affect me,
right?
Can you please consider my analness? Because yeah, I'm not trying to share a bag of chips with you if you just came from a trash chute. And when I put it like that, it's like, yeah, it makes sense. However, like you said, if you are going through a stressful time and I'm being extremely anal, the two may not merge. Because some days you're just like, man, I had a tough day. I'm not worried about being anal in this exact second.
Right. Like this is the last thing that's like worrying me right now.
So that's definitely an issue. I was going to transition to something else and it completely slipped my mind. So I guess we'll just keep going with the flow because I did, like I said, I wanted to talk about rumination, just claiming responsibility for things that really are not your responsibility. And the last thing was, we're talking about anxiety in relationships, but I've had a lot of anxiety relaunching the podcast. So when I started the podcast in 2018, I had like 1 or 2 live stream recordings, and then I had an issue with the studio where I was recording from. And so I started to just record episodes right on my phone, and they were all audio only, and we just moved forward. And the last season that I recorded was in 2020, right when the pandemic started. We didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know how long we were going to be home. And I plan to relaunch in 2021. So in 2021, unfortunately, we lost 2 grandparents back to back. When I came back from their funerals in Jamaica, I injured my back to the point where I could not walk. There was like 3 weeks where I physically could not walk. So I had to do like go to my chiropractor, do all kinds of therapy to like stretch and be able to walk. And I dance, so I wasn't able to dance. So I was kind of sad about that. And just, they say when you lose people that you grieve and, you know, be careful with your financial decisions, but like, it's a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was moving thousands of dollars into different accounts and then like not having any recollection because
doing it before. Yeah.
Yes. And you just don't realize like, oh, I'm grieving. I'm helping my mom plan a funeral for her dad. I'm helping my dad plan a funeral for his mom. So it's like both of my parents are grieving, losing one of their parents. I'm grieving losing 2 grandparents. And now my back is hurt. And oh, by the way, we're in a global pandemic that's lasted over a year. And oh, people do video casts now. It's not just podcasts. So you have to be on camera.
And trying to be on camera when you're not able to sit down for long periods
or just even mentally, like where I was mentally, I was like, okay, what I do to make money was drastically affected by the pandemic. So they were trying to pay us 25 to 30% less than what we were getting paid because we were working remotely. That wasn't working. The bills were still the same. And I've been a contractor for years. I'm a contractor and then I work on entertainment projects. And 2020, my money dropped 50%. And it's like, okay, it's a pandemic, whatever. 2021, same thing. Mm-hmm. I found work in a different industry, in like the banking industry. And after 6 or 7 months, I'm like, they're literally stealing labor. Like I was working 13, 14 hours a day with no overtime, no nothing. So it's like, now you're affecting my ability to record my podcast. Right. You're affecting my ability to do anything that I like to do for fun, for joy. All I'm doing is at work and I'm not even getting the overtime. So now it's like, okay, I can walk again, but now I have this severe financial challenge, which is I don't have the mental capacity to do other things because I'm working all of these hours.
Because you're in the struggle mindset.
Yeah.
Like you're just trying to survive off of less money. It's hard for you to think about side projects.
It just wasn't working. And this whole time I'm like, time is going. I want to relaunch, but I don't feel comfortable getting on camera being like, okay, y'all don't want to hear that my back is hurting and this is going on. This is MILF Ministry. We were talking about sex and poetry and music and inspiration, and I just wasn't really feeling inspired. So I didn't really record anything until August of 2023 at my parents' demand. They were like, let's just get on here and just talk about where you are and move forward. And you've been out here a few times and you were just like, we'll just get on the camera and talk. Because the only way to beat anxiety sometimes is to tackle the specific thing that's bothering you. So I made all kind of excuses about, oh, well, I have to have my hair done to be on camera. You don't. I need to be in a better studio. You know, like I want to get the setup and I want plants and I want this and that. Okay, well, you don't have the time to do all that because by the time the time it's going to take you to set it up how you want with your type A perfectionist personality, you won't ever film. You know, I was asking people, what do I need? What kind of cameras? What kind of this? What kind of that? And finally, my mom was like, what do you really need?
Right.
You need some software. You need a cell phone, a laptop, and get to work. So ramble, but let's bring it back. We talked about anxiety in relationships, but this anxiety was affecting me professionally because I do have a lot to say. But my child that has to eat every day needs money to eat. I need money to eat. I need to eat. I need to rest. So there's always been this like chicken and egg, which is like, do I just hop on here and record episodes and talk? And it might take me 2 years to build a platform where it's sustainable and I still have to work in the background, or do I just sit tight and wait for things to be perfect? So long story short, universe, 3 years passed and nothing was recorded. And now it's just like, record as you are, show up, have the conversations that flow out of you. So can you talk to me about how women and mothers the anxiety can affect us professionally, meaning like whether you're choosing a certain career path or entrepreneurship path, or just even for me, I'll ask the question again, because for me, it was important after divorce to set an example to my daughter that I would really walk in my purpose and actually choose joy professionally, choose joy in relationships. And I realized that I have a lot of maturing to do, because sometimes you think choosing joy means everything is easy, and that's not what it means. It really means like finding your purpose and finding balance within yourself of like, am I being controlling? Do I have anxiety? Am I struggling with this? Okay, what is the source? What can I do to create a better environment within myself, and then spread it out? So back to the original question, which was professionally, when you feel like your anxiety is affecting you professionally, what are your tips for that? Especially as a mother.
So I feel like, and obviously I'm not a mother, but I feel like a lot of women who are mothers, especially like Black women, we have all these responsibilities placed on us about like how we need to perceive ourselves at work, how we should project ourselves to our children, how we should project ourselves to our social groups. And sometimes all of those together can be kind of overwhelming. It's almost like, I feel like the term that I would use is like, you have to be a superwoman syndrome type thing.
Oh, for sure.
Because everything,
especially as a single mother, they make it worse. But women in committed relationships and marriages go through similar things. I know single women hate to hear that, but there's a lot of married women that are carrying the burden. That man literally is just there to show up at church and show up at the sports games, but he's not helping to pack any bags, not helping to plan anything at all. So,
and it's tough,
the superwoman syndrome.
Like, you're trying to be this perfect person all the time, and when something is not the way that you want it to be, or not the way it turns out to be, it feels like you're failing at being a mother. It feels like you're failing at being a good partner, being a good friend, because, oh, you forgot this person's birthday, you didn't buy them a present or something like that. Like something basic and simple like that can just feel like you're not performing or being the best person, parent, mother, partner that you could be. When at the end of the day, everyone is just trying to, move forward in this life and, make themselves happy in the happiest way they can, or the best way they can. And that means that not every day is going to be perfect. Not every encounter or interaction that you have with your child or with your partner is going to be perfect. And I feel like it's coming with accepting that'll make you slowly figure out that, like, this is kind of how I feel like the most popular podcasts, the most popular people that at least I know of are the ones who are not putting on this persona of I'm a perfect person at all times.
That can't be me anyway. right. I don't have the capacity to be on at all times.
Because even like you said, when you were trying to set up the podcast, you were like, oh, I need to have the high quality cameras. But I'm like, if you wait for all of these things to fall into your lap of like everything that has to be top tier quality, then it'll just never happen.
But I think to that point that I feel like, I know for myself, the first thing I thought about when I was getting divorced was, I'm going to be a statistic. Single, dun dun dun, Black, dun dun dun, mother, dun dun dun. Right, so it's like all of those dun just kind of like takes you down in life. Like people look at you this way. And my friend sat me down and was like, but is that true though? Is that what you think people think, or is that what people actually think?
Right.
Because the people in your life love you, respect you, think that you're doing a great job. So are you taking things that you may have seen in the media, things you may have seen in a television show, and putting it and adding it to your stress level?
Life is gonna turn out.
Right. And granted, there are people that look at you and say, oh, I've even had someone say to me like, oh, well, when I'm talking about single Black mothers, I'm not talking about you because you were married and then you had your child. I'm like, I'm still a single Black mom. Like, I mean, no one's looking to qualify that when they see me at all the football games with my child by myself. Like, no one's like, oh, well, maybe she was married and had the baby after marriage and so forth. I look like a single Black mom, just like all the other single Black moms look like. And there are people that talk about single Black moms. So I just remember really struggling with what that was going to look like. Yeah, that perception. And so when you talk about superwoman, I think whether a Black woman is a parent or not, we struggle with that. Like, we want to be top tier, this and that. But the hardest place that we deal with that, I really do feel like, is in our interpersonal relationships with the partners that we choose to like cohabitate with or marry or whatever. Because especially for women born in the 80s and later, there was this push for us to go to school and be educated and be the best and be the top and be this. And I don't know if all Black men got that push. So there's so many women between 40 and 50 that in my mind have done everything right. They really have done everything right. And they are beautiful on the inside, beautiful on the outside, have PhDs, lawyers, doctors, engineers, whatever, and they are single. Which is not the theme of this episode, but it's another. When I think about like the struggles of Black women and the superwoman complex, I go there as well because I'm just like, a lot of these women want families. Yeah. But they see what we're going through and they're like, I'm not like that though. They would rather be single than have a husband that's really a prop, you know, or just be unhappy. Like maybe he's not a prop, but he's controlling financially, or he doesn't respect you as a human being, you know, because it's like you're too intelligent, you love yourself, and you've made too much money to put yourself in a situation to go through that. So once again, when I think about the superwoman syndrome, and we hear the Tyler Perry comment where he's like, if your man can pay the light bill, you should be okay with someone that can pay the light bill. And I want to clarify this, okay, for the record.
Like, how old is Tyler Perry?
Tyler Perry's in his 50s.
Okay. Like different.
And Tyler Perry is a billionaire that employs hundreds of Black people and is creating Black wealth in Atlanta, to be clear. So this is not a Tyler Perry bashing thing for the 3 people that will watch this. But let me not joke because we're just starting. But I think in all seriousness, what I'm getting at is, speaking of the superwoman complex, I feel like there's so many Black women that's like, I'm not doing that. Because even Stedman in his own right does not make as much money as Oprah, but Stedman will be able to afford somewhere to live if they were able to break up.
Right.
He ain't never been broke. He may not be able to buy her all the stuff she could buy herself, but he can buy her something, right? I don't know what bills he pays at her estate, but I know that if Oprah became incapacitated, that he could put them in, even if it's a 1-bedroom apartment, he could do that and he could take care of all of that without her doing anything. So when I think about the Tyler Perry comment and the superwoman issues that we struggle with, what are some of your thoughts on that? Like just Black women in general dealing with, I did everything right, but here I am single and childless. Because there's anxiety there as well. We're talking about mental health. And there's anxiety. Like I know people that are trying to have children through surrogate in their late 40s. And basically signing up to voluntarily be a single mother because they didn't find a partner that was suitable. And there's a lot of anxiety around that. Like I'm running out of time and how will I handle this? And I'm dating people, but they're not really what I want. So it's kind of like I'm going to be forced to be a single mom or no mom at all. How are you seeing that, especially from a professional's place, of the anxiety among Black women in that situation?
I think it's definitely something that's risen, especially recently, because even people in my age range.
Yeah, because you're young, you're in your 30s.
Yeah, that's definitely something that is going to be basically an issue for all of us. A lot of women that I know, because I went to med school, so obviously a very high degree professionally. Some people that I know in med school also had like a master's degree and like a PhD, and are also still single and are still dating. It's just something that is like this disconnect in the way society tells us that we need to be as women.
Yeah.
Versus the expectation that men have of their partners.
Right.
And I feel like the women now compared to the women in Tyler Perry's age group, which are like closer to their 50s.
Yeah, 50s and up.
The expectations we have of our partner are much higher.
Especially emotionally.
Yes.
Emotional intelligence, yes, for sure. Yeah.
And I've had this conversation with like my aunts or even like my grandparents. It's like you said, some people are just like have the thought of like, oh, well, if my husband is like paying my bills and taking care of the kids, that's the bare minimum and that's all that I need. But also, I feel like the younger women, as we're going up, we actually need a partner who can like understand if I'm sad and not just gonna ignore me if I'm like crying and upset. Or we also want a partner to like understand like, hey, I'm feeling overwhelmed, like taking care of the kids and also going to work every day. Like, even if it's not like he has to also do it, like understanding like, hey, maybe we should hire someone
that part
to help out, or maybe we should leave the kids with family to help out, so we're not feeling so overwhelmed. Like it doesn't necessarily always have to be he is taking care of the kids, but just having the mindset of like, oh, my wife or my partner is overwhelmed.
Let's bring in the nanny. Let's bring it. Can't afford a nanny. Let me call my grandma. Let me call my auntie.
Leave it with grandma. Like there's other things that we can do to like think of solutions to where we're going to be in a healthier space.
Right. But how would you advise someone that's managing that anxiety? Because I feel like that's a real anxiety among any woman that's over 30 right now. I believe it's a real anxiety. When I say that, if you are over 30 and you want to have children, especially if you're a Black woman, but if you're just over 30 period and you want to have children and you're quote unquote educated, and when I say educated, quote unquote, I'm doing it on purpose, meaning that you are educated with American system of college, because we all know that there's different forms of education. There's like labor school, there are people that are hairstylists, people that are mechanics, people that do things that you didn't go to a university, but that anxiety among them. What would be your advice in terms of just like partnership? Because we do have to go. So we're going to be wrapping up this. Leave us with some advice for, I am a woman in my 30s. I want to have a family.
How would I go about that? Or how would I relieve the anxiety?
Relieve the anxiety, because you can't tell anyone what to do to look for a partner or anything like that. But like, how would you be advising someone that's like, these are the real issues in their life and they're feeling anxious, like, I want to find a partner, I want to do this, I want to do that. Like, how would you help them manage those emotions?
I feel like it would depend on how soon they want to have the family. Like if it's someone who's like, I feel like I'm ready to have a family in like the next few months or at least within a year, then there's definitely like a lot of things that they can start to do, like talking to their doctors or their OBGYN to get that stuff started if that's something they really want. If it's more like, I want to have a family, but I'm not finding the right partners and I can have a bit more time, then I feel like it's more to relieve the anxiety, having conversations with their partner. It's not necessarily like, when do you want to have a child? I want to have a child right now, but like looking for the qualities within a partner that's going to be like qualities that will be good partnership and a good father. Right. Like seeing how their relationships with their nieces or nephews are, seeing how their relationships, if they do have children from a previous marriage, how those relationships are, because that's also important. Because I feel like now there's way more blended families. But to relieve the anxiety within yourself, I feel like there can be like this ticking clock
Yeah,
that
that's
you
what I was
have,
thinking
or
too.
like
Yeah.
I'm running out of time.
Mhm.
But honestly, there's so much more advancement in like medicine and the way we can have families now.
Mhm.
It doesn't necessarily have to be like, oh, I'm in my 30s, everything is over for me. Because it can be expensive, but there's ways,
Mhm.
especially being on the West Coast, a lot of people have this covered with their insurance. They may
Yeah.
not know it,
Mhm.
but family planning can be covered by your insurance, especially over here.
Right.
To where you can like freeze your eggs, set stuff aside to where you make sure you're good for the future,
Mhm.
so that you have time to find a partner, and then you
Yeah.
can have that discussion with the partner in the future. It doesn't have to be like a rush to happen immediately if you're looking for ways to plan within yourself.
Right. And for me, as a non-psychiatrist, I think the best thing a woman can do is really figure out their self, right? So most of the theme in the relaunch is honey for your spirit, right? And it's really about understanding, like, do I like comedy? Do I want to play golf? Do I like having something that you like to do that does not involve your children, that does not involve any partners, where you really truly find a sense of joy? That's part one. And understanding what you like and what you don't like. Like, what are your deal breakers? What are your boundaries? Because we tend to stretch ourselves and accommodate ourselves for love, and that's okay. But I think it's important that we're kind of clear of like, I do want a partner that's emotionally available, or I want a partner that's financially secure, because I'm going to shut down if I don't know how we're going to pay the bills. Like, there's not going to be any sex. There's not going to be any joy in the house because I don't feel,
you're worried about.
I don't feel secure. And it's like, you're going to get a different version of me. So rather than marry someone and know that we're not going to be happy because we're struggling with this, like, just be very clear. And I don't think women are taught to even know what makes them feel financially secure, emotionally secure, sexually secure, like how you're navigating yourself. And so I think women carry anxiety about so many things because we're taught to like, oh my gosh, did you dress up? Did you put on makeup? Did you get liposuction? Did you do this? You got to do all these things to attract somebody. And none of it is about
making yourself happy.
Right. Or what you like. It's never, oh, I hope he likes me. No, I hope I like him. Like, none of us are taught to, I hope that I like him, like for real, him, not what he does or what he looks like or anything like that. Like, I hope I like him as a person because he blends with the things that I like as a person. So once again, we're just getting started. No format, no theme, no anything. We're going to just sign off. I don't know if you have any closing remarks because we got to go. It is what it is. I'll slap an intro and outro on this later. But any closing remarks?
No. Just like you said, do things that make yourself happy, and then that'll make your partner happy, hopefully, and your kids happy.
I feel like showing up actually happy and taking moments for yourself and teaching your children, male or female, to speak up for the things that make them happy and to learn how to find joy within themselves is some of the best parenting you could ever do. Yeah. Because I just feel like women specifically are not socialized to do that, but neither are children. They're not raised to be like, I don't like this food, or I don't like this family member, or you know what? I think I want to learn more about this subject. Right. And then say, oh, okay, well, let's figure out how you can get paid. It's just like, be a doctor, be a lawyer, be a whatever. So once again, we're wrapping it up. And I hope that this discussion was helpful. And leave your comments. Send me DMs about topics that you would love to hear more about. If you would like to be a guest, you can send me a DM on social media. I will check it. I will reply. And welcome to the relaunch of MILF Ministry podcast. Glad to have you here. Bye. Bye. All right.